Hi everyone, so we're going to start our new unit here on biomes. So this is going to be specifically talking about different terrestrial biomes, and then we're also going to talk about different aquatic biomes. So starting off, thinking about what is a biome actually. Biomes are large regions that are characterized by a specific type of climate and certain types of plant and animal communities. So these large regions really indicated by temperature and climate here, and that temperature and climate is going to help determine our plant life, which is going to help determine our animal life. So it's good to think of biomes as many different ecosystems, so many individual ecosystems. So all those ecosystems are going to be very similar in nature, but our biome is that larger region that's made up of many ecosystems. So let's take a look at our biomes with their vegetation. So biomes are described by vegetation because plants grow in areas that are going to be determined where other organisms can live there as well. So our plants are going to help determine what animals live in that area. So for example, if we have a really large trees, and that's mostly all trees, you're not going to find animals who can't climb trees and reach the resources. You're going to find animals like birds who can live up there, insects who live within the trees, maybe animals that can climb that are really going to thrive in that area. So plants in a particular biome are going to have characteristics and specialized structures, or they're going to have adaptations that allow them to survive. So remember that adaptations are different changes that can occur within those plants to allow them to survive. So they adapt or change to the environment around them. So these adaptations are going to include things like size, shape, and color. So for an example, if we're talking about our tundra, very dry and very cold, we're going to see shorter plants because they are not receiving enough water to survive in the tundra. So that's the type of plant life we're going to see. Where some trees like pine and spruce are simply going to bend or fold branches to shrug off that snow, so it will be able to survive. So those are little adaptations that are going to occur. So if we take a look at all these different biomes within the world, we can see our polar ice caps, tropical rainforests, temperate rainforests, temperate forests, the taiga, savanna, carpal, desert, all these different places. And you can see that all these different places are found around the world. So it's not just one specific place, okay, the United States is just temperate forest. No, we have a bunch of different biomes that can be found across all of our continents here. So let's talk about biomes and their climate. So a good thing to do here is define climate. So climate is the average weather conditions in an area over a long period of time. So weather is just taking a look at the day-to-day, where climate is looking over a really long period of time, whether that be maybe a year, 10 years, 20 years, to taking a look at those weather changes, those weather conditions over a long period of time. Climate is a main factor in determining which plants can grow in a certain area. And that's going to, remember, the plants are going to define what's in that biome. So if it's really hot and there's not a lot of water, you're probably not going to see as many plants. So that area is not going to have as many animals, and that's really going to determine. So that climate is going to determine plant life, which is going to determine our biome. Temperature and precipitation are going to be two of the most important things that we're going to see here as well in determining our region's climate. So let's take a look at those. So most organisms are adapted to live within a particular range of temperatures, and they can't go too far above or too far below. So us, as humans, we're warm-blooded creatures, so we have a larger range of temperatures that we can survive in because we regulate our temperature better. Where if we look at reptiles, who are cold-blooded animals, they have a smaller range of temperature that they can survive in. So it all depends on how that organism is able to survive. Precipitation is also going to limit the organisms that can be found. We know that all organisms need water, and bigger the animal, the more water it needs. So if we're comparing elephant to mice, an elephant is going to need a significant amount more water than a mouse is going to need. So biomes that do not receive enough rainfall to support large trees are going to be dominated by smaller trees, shrubs, and grasses. So that's going to limit the different organisms that are going to live there as well. So in biomes where rainfall is not frequent, vegetation we're going to see is mostly cactuses and desert shrubs. The higher the temperature and precipitation, we're going to see taller and denser vegetation that lives there. And we're going to take a look at that with this little triangle here. So if we take a look, we can see on the hypotenuse of our triangle, we see decreasing temperature. And on this edge here, we see decreasing moisture. So where we see high precipitation is right here in this corner, which is a tropical rainforest. We also see really high temperatures here. So this is going to be an ideal place. And we know that our tropical rainforests are the most abundant in different animal populations and most diverse. As we decrease our moisture, we can see less and less plant life over here in the savanna. Same thing is going to happen when we decrease our temperature. We might still have a lot of rainfall. We'll see our temperate forest here. But as we decrease that moisture, we're going to see less and less tall trees here, less and less different moistures. Keep going up, decreasing in temperature, we're going to see our taiga, which is our boreal forest, different type of trees here, all the way up to our Arctic, which is really, really cold and really, really dry in the tundra, where we see very little plant life here. Next thing we're going to talk about here is our latitude versus our altitude. So it's important to remember that latitude is moving up like rungs of a ladder, and we start measuring our latitude at the equator. So latitude is the distance north or south from the equator, and it's expressed in degrees. So we can really see that with this circle here, where we can see right at the North Pole, we see 90 degrees, we see 0 degrees coming through our equator, and we measure those lines up from the equator or down from the equator. So whenever we see a measurement of latitude, it's never just going to be 15 degrees. It's going to be 15 degrees north or south because we start that measurement at the equator. Our altitude, on the other hand, is the height of an object above the reference point. So a lot of the times we use sea level as our reference point. So when we're on a really high mountain, we say that we are 1,000 degrees, or say 4,000 feet above sea level. So that would be the measurement of our altitude. And climates are going to vary with that latitude and altitude. So if we take a look here, as latitude and altitude increase, our biomes and vegetation is going to change. So if we think of this as this is the equator, and we're moving towards the poles for our latitude here, and altitude is going up, we can see towards the equator at a lower altitude, we see really heavy, dense vegetation life, but as we increase in altitude, we're going to see less and less vegetation because it can't survive. Same thing's going to happen with our latitude. As we move out in latitude, we're going to see less and less vegetation available there. Really cool thing, if you've ever been hiking up a tall mountain, you're going to notice that as you keep going higher and higher, you might see that the trees are actually getting shorter towards the top, which is something that's pretty interesting there. So last thing here that we're going to talk about is biomes in net primary production. So the first term that we're going to define here is gross primary production, and we might abbreviate that GPP. And that's the rate at which primary producers, which are going to be those plants, undergo photosynthesis. So they're creating those sugars. The difference here with net primary production is the amount of organic matter or biomass that's going to remain after those primary producers use some of the glucose to carry out cellular respiration. So it's going to be important to note that respiration, we know in primary producers, they do both photosynthesis and cellular respiration. So they have to use some of the sugars they make to undergo cellular respiration. And these ecosystems are going to vary in their net primary productivity depending on the rate at which those primary producers are converting energy to that biomass. Warm and wet climates generally have a higher net primary productivity than cold and dry biomes. So if we take a look here, we see our net primary production is going to depend on our gross minus R, which is respiration. So as these plants go through photosynthesis, that's going to be all of the glucose that is produced. And then we're going to have to take that gross and minus the respiration, so take out the energy that's used for cellular respiration. And what you have left is going to be your net primary production. So again, taking a look over here, our solar power here is creating this gross. We're going to see some of it is lost to respiration, and 40% is going to go to our net primary production. So those are just some different things to help you start defining biomes. If you have any questions, make sure we reach out.